I want to do some over-unders. Now, I love over-unders.
Okay.
Love them. And it's not, some of these I would wait a little while based on injuries in camp. But I have my favorite over of the NFL season. So what the Miami Dolphins did in the off season was, as a franchise, pivot to the offensive side of the ball. They spent their money on offense. They got rid of a defensive coach who didn't get along with Tua. So my first takeaway is I have, and I use that as an example with Tua, who I don't think is as good as Kirk Cousins. So Mike Zimmer did not get along. Flores and Zimmer were essentially fired because they didn't get along with their quarterback. We know that Flores can coach, and we know that Mike Zimmer can coach. The Vikings over-under is 8.5, and here's my sales job. Detroit's Detroit, actually has some nice offensive pieces, but with Kirk Cousins, let's say he has a 10 to 15% elevation in numbers, reasonable considering they have now the McVay system. The Packers, by the way, they open with the Packers. Aaron, not at OTAs, has struggled with rookie receivers and new parts for years, and they have 4 new wide receivers, either drafted or acquired. I think it's 5. So that opening week game for Minnesota is one of my favorite. It's my favorite bet in the opening weekend. Take the Vikings. Green Bay started slow last year. Green Bay's had some ugly September games. Aaron Rodgers, brand new pieces offensively, a new right tackle. It's like interesting. So Minnesota, offensive coach, Packers kind of guessing what the Vikings are doing offensively. Cousins elevated. Their over-under is 8.5. I think they'll be the most improved team in the league. We still don't know what Chicago is. We kind of know what Dan Campbell is. The longer he coaches, the limitations become clear. Minnesota, over 8.5. I'm generally an under better. I have 4 other unders. The one over I love is the Vikings over 8.5. Millman, what do you got?
I don't hate it at all. I do think that we all go into every season thinking the Vikings are undervalued. We love, in years past, we've loved what Mike Zimmer can do with a defense. We've loved how Mike Zimmer, in theory, can make his defense better as the season goes on. We've loved how they would always end a year, and so we're excited about what they can do in the next year. So I think we're all sort of have a bias to the Vikings, because I think also in the media, a lot of us believe Kirk Cousins is a good enough quarterback that he gets too little credit for being good and too much blame for not being great in the highest profile moments when everyone sees him. But if you're betting, you know, week to week, he can deliver and he can put this team in a position to win. So I don't hate it. The Vikings, for what it's worth, according to our projections, have the 8th easiest schedule in the NFL next year. So I don't hate it at all. Would you like to guess on the team that started getting the most over action on their season win totals?
All right, hold on.
You will laugh when I tell you the answer.
You know what I'm going to guess? Bears.
Right? It's the right say cohort of really terrible teams, but New York Jets.
Oh, God. I don't think Saleh can coach. I don't think he's a head coach.
The Jets are number 1 in tickets and money at FanDuel and several other books. We reported a few weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, the market is all about the Jets, said FanDuel spokesman Kevin Hennessy. It's not close, but this is why it's why the over-under totals, the win totals have become such public markets. This is entirely based on people deciding Zach Wilson is ascendant. They've decided that the Jets, because they did the right thing and drafted talented players in positions of need, and they fell into their laps in the draft because they were so bad they had high draft picks, they're going to be amazing because rookies always turn out great because that's what happens every time, right? And so people love betting the over on the Jets.
Right? Half their games last year, they looked unprepared. Unprepared. Not a single time in McVay's first year that I think that team's unprepared. I think solid. Listen, we know 75% of coordinators don't work. I think he's over his skis. I think he's a great DC. I think he's over his skis.
It's interesting. Look, I've heard your rant about Saleh before. Don't disagree with it entirely. I think it's a little early to tell on him. Where I disagree with you is Dan Campbell, where maybe I'm being blind or maybe I'm just being emotional because I love the way he coaches. I think he can turn this team into winners. Not this year, but I think eventually. I'm a buyer on the Lions.
Yeah, I'm a buyer at 6.5 on Detroit. First of all, their offensive personnel, Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, Penei Sewell left tackle, Goff's good enough, Amon-Ra St. Brown. They also went out and got a wide receiver on the market. Why is that? It's slipping. I'm getting older. I think their offensive personnel is pretty solid. Now, their problem is a lot of stuff over the top, give up a lot of big yards in the back end. But I think in that division, we don't know what Chicago is. I've said I think Minnesota wins their division. I have real reservations about Green Bay. I mean, to give you an example of Aaron Rodgers' trust issues, Amari Rodgers, the slot receiver from Clemson, had 4 catches last year. I mean, this is a guy that had family trust issues, personnel trust issues, executive front office trust issues. That's Aaron's personality.
Right.
He struggles with that, right? Like he really does. So, okay, so let me give you my favorite under. So the Cowboys are at 10.5. I love the under here. So the early schedule, what do we know about Dallas? Season ended on a very iffy play call, quarterback draw, can't get up in time. So Mike McCarthy enters the season on the hot seat. They open with Brady and Burrow. Then they've got to go on the road and face Philadelphia and the Rams. So right now, that tells you these are better teams and teams with momentum at the end of last year. There's a chance they have 3 or 4 or 5 early losses in the first 8 games, and you're going to have a completely divided locker room. And now the schedule's got the Giants twice, and it's got Washington twice. But I think Washington and Philadelphia are absolutely better. And frankly, because Dable and Daniel Jones, the Giants will be better. Not great, but better. They had a pretty good offseason. So 10.5 to me, you could almost bank in coaching disadvantages throughout the early portions of the season. McCarthy's getting ripped. We know their edge rush, run game, and O-line isn't as special as 2 years ago. Dallas under 10.5 on a team that's always over bet feels like a really solid play.
100% with you. For everything you just said, plus pull back and look at sort of the macro perspective, the Cowboys their win total is always inflated because they're the Cowboys. So the bookmakers know they can take a Cowboys team that shouldn't have more than 9 wins on the board, that they might not see as being better than 9 wins in a season. They can make them 10. They can make them 10.5 because they know there are so many Cowboys fans out there. They're just going to bet the over no matter what the line is. So it's a great way for them to bank against some liability on the other side because there's a lot of public sentiment in the favor of the Cowboys.
All right. Any of these other over-unders in front of you? I'm close to betting under on Kansas City 10.5. I think it's going to be hard to win 11 in that division.
To me, that's the most interesting one. I'm glad you mentioned it because I'm looking at it right now. That is a terribly hard division. Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos. Like any one of those quarterbacks can win a game no matter what the score is in the first half, no matter what the position is for them in the final 2
Also,
minutes.
all these teams, Raiders elevated their pass rush. Khalil Mack, Chargers elevated their pass rush.
Totally.
Randy Gregory. So they will face 3 elite pass rushes. You can go.
100%.
I mean, if you go 3-3 in that division, you're Kansas City. I think everybody's going to do. I think this is the first time that I remember liking the Raiders. I couldn't tell you the last time I liked the Raiders. I think they're actually, Jesus. Hunter Renfro's arguably the most talented slot in the league. Devontae Adams, top 2 to 3 sideline receiver. Darren Waller after Travis Kelce, top 6 running back. I've always loved Carr. Solid left tackle, Colton Miller. It's like 2 edge rushers. What they have is they have the important positions in 2022 football: left tackle, quarterback, 2 receivers, edge rushers. I mean, the Rams and Bengals had bad linebacking cores. Rams had injuries at safety. The interior of the O-line for the Bengals wasn't good in the Super Bowl. Like, there are positions now that matter a lot.
Yeah.
And the Raiders have a lot of them covered for the first time since I can remember. I think Denver's the best team in the division. I think Kansas City's a wild card team. I know it just goes against everything we believe, but I don't love their defense. I think Tyreek Hill is kind of a field tilter. I'm not sure if you can really replace that. I don't think they're quite as dynamic. I think you can defend them differently, and I don't think they can make. I think they have the weakest pass rush in the division. Feels like a 10-7 team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the Chiefs under. Incredibly hard schedule. I don't know if I like the Raiders better than. I don't know if I like the Broncos better than the Chargers. If you're betting on someone to win that division that isn't the Chiefs, because I do think the Chargers have a little bit higher ceiling in terms of talent. Their defensive line is just better than the Broncos. I think they match up receiver wise with anybody else in the division. And I think Justin Herbert, just by virtue of having a third year now, is going to be that much smarter and more effective. And I also think they learned a lot from sort of the very cavalier way they treated their possessions and not trying to get points at times when they should have been getting points. And I think that for Brandon Staley, the coach, who all of a sudden, like last year, we saw it in one of those games against Kansas City, kept going for it on 4th and goal when getting points would have been the smart thing to do. I think he's going to recalibrate his play calling a little bit, having learned a lot in that first year and sort of what happens to your detriment if you don't get some points in specific spots.
Yeah, I didn't love all that. I like my analytics to a degree, but,
I like my analytics unless it's costing me a side that I need, either in a total or in a cover. And in that game, the Chargers were by far the right side at like +3.5, and they ended up losing in overtime and nobody covered. And it was hurtful. It was genuinely hurtful.